Today is Sunday, September 1st, 2019, and this is Celtics Beat here on CLNS Media, the leading online provider of audio video coverage of your Boston Celtics. Evan Valenti filling in for Adam Kaufman here this week, episode 330, featuring Mass Live's Tom Westerholm, is brought to you by betonline.ag. Use the promo code CLNS50 to get a 50% bonus on your first deposit of $55 or more. Welcome into Celtics Beat, everybody. Evan Valenti again, filling in for Adam Kaufman here this week. He's on vacation, a well-deserved vacation for Adam and his family. Trust me, the guy works like a complete maniac for us at CLNS, for WBZ out in Boston, for DraftKings, interviewing Mike Francesa, the sports pope, every single week. The guy has an insane schedule. I'll let him have a couple of weeks off during the season as well if he will indulge me. But shout out to Adam. Enjoy your vacation, Adam. With that being said, we're back here on Celtics Beat here on Sunday, joined by Mass Live's Tom Westerholm, who's just, between him and Corrales at Mass Live, we're so lucky to have guys on the beat all over the place, but the Mass Live guys are always great, and we're going to get into a lot of stuff as it pertains to the Celtics. But, Tom, let me ask you a question. I'm going to put you on the spot here. We have not discussed this. It is the worst time of year. We've all discussed the fact that there's the deadest sports time of year. We're getting into it because football's here, so life is a little bit easier. But for us NBA heads like you and me and everybody else listening to the show, it's kind of rough right now. What would you give up to have at least, maybe not the actual start of the season, but maybe training camp or some preseason action? What would you give up to have a little taste of the NBA right now?
So I'm actually going to voice an unpopular opinion here. This is the best time of year because I get a little break. So I have a 2-year-old. I get a little chance to hang out with my son for 2 months straight. This is great. I see everybody on Twitter being like, I can't wait for the start of the NBA season, and I'm just kind of like, guys, calm down. We need the beat writers need a little bit of time here.
Yeah, I think a lot of you do for sure.
Yeah. I have one dumb suggestion that the NBA would never take up, but I think. I'm always kind of curious what it would look like if they, instead of having the draft and free agency right after the season, or at least the draft, instead of having the draft right after the season, if they had it closer, if they moved it up to, now, or this type of time, just because then you would have, the draft, and then you would get everybody directly into training camp, and it would sort of ramp up instead of ramping down from the finals that then go into the draft, that then go into the summer. I've always kind of wondered what that would look like, and I'm sure there's very good reasons that I haven't fully fleshed out why I would never do it that way. But it would be kind of interesting if instead of, having all of this high drama stuff immediately after the finals, if that stuff all led into the regular season instead of just kind of being, almost distracting from the finals, which is kind of what happened this year.
What if we move Summer League then? What if we do Summer League late? And then, you have the finals. Let's take a breather. I'm a big fan of doing free agency after the draft because I think it changes the way you draft and the way you approach free agency. So you have free agency, draft in some order. I know people are going to go crazy over that. But then take a break and then have summer league so that we can see what the young guys are. Then get them in the training camp. Get guys in shape. And then get into training camp, and then get into the preseason. I see what you're saying. There's got to be a way to spread this out so that we can have, look, the NBA right now, and I know you know this maybe better than anybody else, the NBA is a content machine right now. I mean, We are in the glory days of every day there's a new NBA content thing that you can get into. Unfortunately, recently it's been the DeMarcus Cousins news. It's a content machine, all right? Dwight Howard signing the Lakers, obviously, is I can't believe it actually happened. I'm still stunned about that. Carmelo Anthony's in a 5-on-5 tryout with Philly or New York or whatever, trying to latch onto a team somewhere. The fact that we're doing stuff like this to whet our appetites in August means we can spread this out more to better benefit the 365-day-a-year NBA fan, which is, I think, a lot of people at this point. I think a lot of people, in terms of being a casual NBA fan, has been instead of being hipster and not cool, it's it's super popular, and it's going to keep going in that direction. So maybe if Adam Silver is listening to this podcast, recommendation from Tom and I, find a way. And again, we might not have the right answers, but find a way to spread it out more. The only problem, though, Tom, that screws with your 2-month straight vacation. You know what I mean? Like that's a nice plus. Like to have that sort of time that you can just devote to turning your brain off and spending time with the family. Like that's also important too, though.
I mean, it's important for like nobody's going to feel sorry for the beat writers, and that's 100% fair. Yeah, I mean, and there's like you can see the 365-day thing, even with the dumb stories like LeBron distracting from his kid, like that kind of that kind of stuff that people
don't get me going on that.
Yeah, like just that kind of stuff though is part of the same thing you're talking about, where it's like it's 365 days a year, like everybody wants to argue about something NBA wise every day. So yeah, I mean it is kind of crazy, and I don't know that my idea is as half-formed as an idea can be. I mean, I think it's entirely possible that there isn't a way to improve on it, and that there's going to be little flaws in every system, including the NBA's really, really good system right now, and there's no reason to mess with it when it's clearly working so well. But I do think that there would be something. I would just be curious to know what they could do to try to let the finals be the finals and not have free agency encroaching on it. Because I did feel like that subtracted from, what was a really fun series, even with all the injuries this year.
Yeah, like when Durant went down, all of a sudden it was like, oh, where does he go now? Like, does he go back to Golden State
exactly.
now? Like, that's what everybody thought immediately. It's like, cool. There's a game going on. Like, Toronto's trying to do something they've never done before. The Kawhi's on one leg. The supporting cast of Toronto's amazing. Masai, his whole plan worked, and there's so much going on here that immediately the first thing you think is like Durant goes down and goes, oh no, what does that do about us? Like you're not wrong about that. You're not wrong. He went down. It was immediately, what does that do to this free agency thing? What does that mean for Kyrie? What does that mean for this, and this? We are so obsessed with player movement in this league. I mean, rightfully so, because there's so much of it, and there's so much top-end star talent moving that it drives everything. But to your point, like, we should also enjoy the NBA Finals. It's the best basketball you're going to see every single calendar year. And maybe it's been devalued a little bit, and that shouldn't be that way. And, like, it feels like a very recent thing where this has happened, where, like, I will just make an example just a couple of years ago when Golden State and Cleveland met in the finals, and Cleveland came back from that 3-1 deficit. Like, nobody was talking about free agency after that. It was more about in the moment, this is amazing. I can't believe this is happening. Like, the block. I mean, that play itself lived on for how many weeks after the game was over? I mean, it was, we have to get back to, I think it's a great point, we have to get back to enjoying basketball in real time and letting the free agency stuff, take a back burner in some capacity. Like, the only problem is, I think that free agency and speculation and rumors, fuels so much traffic to websites that people just keep doing what we want. Like, that's what people crave, quote unquote, in terms of generating clicks and generating views and I mean, I work for a company that likes to do a lot of short minute, couple minute YouTube clips and put them together. And when we talk about, Kyrie leaving to go to Brooklyn or whatever versus like Game 5 of like the Eastern Conference semifinals, you're going to get way more people clicking on, my thoughts on Kyrie going to Brooklyn versus the other thing. So maybe it's just I don't know how we get back to where we were, Tom. I don't know.
Yeah, and I do think that there is something to be said for, like, this free agent class was so ridiculous that maybe, two things. One, maybe this year's finals were always doomed just because the landscape will shift after these finals, and everybody was excited to see what it would look like post-Warriors, so everybody was kind of looking beyond it. So I do think that there is something to that. And then I also think, look, next year's free agency class is not going to have the same buzz. And I think next year's finals will have a ton of buzz because the teams are going to be different. Like, even if the Warriors do get through, it's going to be a very different type of Warriors team. Whoever gets in from the East is probably going to be different. I think that next year's finals will probably have a little more buzz. And I think there will be less free agency drama taking away from it because, again, it won't be guys who are in the finals who are, necessarily moving. There won't be like, Kevin Durant rumors and Kawhi rumors, the two best players in the finals like literally, everybody thinks they're leaving after the finals. Like, I don't think that's going to happen again. So it might just resolve itself, and that would be really good because, like you said, like it's really fun to watch the finals. So yeah, I think that hot take. Yeah, I'm coming in spicy today, but yeah, no, I think that it might resolve itself just kind of naturally this year. But it was a weird phenomenon this past season, no doubt.
I'm glad you mentioned the free agency class coming up because there's, obviously there are certain ways I want to go with this podcast, and you're kind of doing it for me here. I have sort of a hot take, and I'm kind of curious your opinion on it. Is this summer in the Team USA experience? I'll lump in with this. Is this summer and that experience bigger for Jaylen Brown or Jayson Tatum? You think?
It's a good question. I think I would probably say Tatum. I think that the hope that a lot of people have for Tatum is that he is going to become a superstar. And I think that when you look at guys who go to Team USA and come away from it, inspired or whatever it might be, to sort of take that next step, his next step or what he could potentially get to with his next step is just so ridiculously high. And the same thing is true of Jaylen, obviously, too. But I think Tatum even more so is just like, if he can go to Team USA and he can come back with the right type of mindset, he could really develop a lot. And I think he could potentially become sort of the star that everybody's hoping to see him become. So, if that happens, I think that it will definitely be him. But I mean, that could happen with Jaylen, and it could not happen with Tatum. And then, the opposite would be true. I just think that especially with Tatum's, obviously his potential extension next season and everything, and just the fact that it seems like the Celtics are sort of building around him now, I would go with him.
Yeah, so let's do this one at a time. I think it's a question that's easily answerable. I think you could make the argument for Tatum very easily. I mean, his ceiling is ginormous, and finding a way to get him back to the mindset like that rookie year. And again, it was more of the team around him, I think, that when Kyrie goes down and when the team basically revolves around the young guys, it's easier for him to look, more like a superstar. It's going to be more tailored towards that this year. So getting back into a good mindset, being like, hey, don't worry about last year. Put that behind you. Here's some games against high-quality competition. Get yourself ramped up. Luckily for you, a lot of your team is here. Like Marcus Smart's here. Your new other point guard, Kemba Walker's here. Your buddy Jaylen Brown's here. Take this time, get acclimated, and work on your game. And you're going to learn from some really smart people. Like Steve Kerr's going to be there. Greg Popovich is going to be there. Amongst players that have, that are having somewhat of, different varying levels of success in the league. So for Tatum, who, everybody touts as the next big thing and is going to hopefully, take a next leap forward where he turns into this all-star and maybe even superstar status. Again, we'll see with Tatum. And again, we all know what the ceiling is, but I think it's a much bigger deal for Jaylen Brown. It's because of what you mentioned. The upcoming free agency class here is very shallow, okay? And one big name was taken off it when Draymond Green. There we go. I'm going to cut that
with
out.
Draymond, yeah.
Well, yeah, Draymond. Look, it's been a long day. Draymond with Draymond Green, being taken off that list, and now Jaylen just ascends another step, closer to the top of the pile here. It's huge for him because not only in terms of money, I do think that there's interest, and I don't have any. I'm not sourcing this. I have no inside info on this. I just have a brain. I do think there's interest in the Celtics in bringing back Jaylen Brown for a longer contract and having him play with the team. I think that's why you draft the guy third overall in the draft, right? I think you want to have him pass his first contract. Just going to throw it out there. And for Jaylen, this is a big opportunity for him because, again, he's not really thought of in the same air as Tatum and as a lot of the other high-end guys that are his age. He's just not. And it's, unfortunate, sure, but, I mean, it's just the way it goes. And if you're Jaylen Brown, you're just going to have to use that as motivation. But Greg Popovich has had some really fun things to say about Jaylen Brown throughout the summer. You've heard from different guys on Team USA talk about how great Jaylen's been. It's not like this is a thing where Jaylen's kind of an afterthought. No, Jaylen has done really well. They've used him as a small ball 4 to get him on the court more. His defense has been pretty good. He tacked a lot, and his shots obviously been reworked over the years to be a very competent shooter at this point. And look, he's a very fun guy to watch the open floor, but he obviously needs to work on a couple things. But if you can shore those things up and you have him and Tatum together, your ceiling changes as a team. And Boston, as an organization, has a ginormous decision to make. A lot of their contracts coming up are going to be interesting. Like Jaylen and Jayson are the two big ones. They have Smart locked up for a little bit on a very affordable deal. They just signed Kemba Walker to this big deal. So some numbers are going to have to be crunched here. And some guys, they're going to have to make decisions, not, on the front end, but the guys on the back end, the 7th, 8th, 9th guys you have in the team, those guys might have to get sacrificed so that we can pay Jaylen Brown more money. And so that being said, like there's money that could be left on the table here for Jaylen, but there's money to make out there for Jaylen as well. And as you look at him this summer, like he's, doing a lot of the same things that you'd want him to do. And when you look at this season, you're looking at minutes and points and rebounds and assignments to go around. Jaylen's a guy that you could easily take from one and apply to another because Boston's strength is that like wing defense. Smart can play up many positions, so it's not like he's really penciled into that point guard spot. He can guard up positions. Tatum and Gordon Hayward obviously fit in that spot as well. So with Jaylen, we all know with Tatum, he's going to get max money somewhere. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Somebody's going to take a shot on that young of a talent and be like, yeah, we're going to give him a max contract. Doesn't really matter. Restricted free agent, so we're going to give it to him. Jaylen, not the same case. I think Jaylen has much more to gain by playing well this offseason into the summer and into the start of the next season more than Tatum is. That's just my argument. But I think you can go either way.
Yeah, I mean, I can see what you're saying there. And, if you're talking about like just purely, in terms of what he could earn on his next contract, I think that's definitely true that, that Tatum is pretty much locked in and Jaylen might be a little more variable there. In terms of, it'll be interesting to see what Jaylen gets out of this because I think that, this past season he did such a good job of fitting himself into the role that the Celtics needed him to play. And I think he's got to do a similar thing this year with Team USA. But I'll be curious to see what he kind of does with this, taking it into next season and what the Celtics need from him, next year. When I talked to him a couple of times this past year and he talked about how, roles change. Like he's like, yeah, right now my role is to be an energy guy, coming off the bench, but roles change. And, and I think that will be sort of interesting to see because with this Team USA, I don't know that he is getting, a particularly different role than the one that he already played. And I'll be curious to see how that sort of translates into a season where, he probably will be back in the starting lineup and he probably will have a chance to, do a little bit more and to, take on more responsibilities. But yeah, I mean, I think that, it'll be interesting to see what he takes away from it, how that translates to the season and how this season translates to, the money that he's going to get. Because I think that, obviously the Celtics would like to bring him back and obviously they want to get him on a pretty fair deal, but it's going to be difficult to get a, 23-year-old, 6'7" athletic wing, on a fair deal just because that archetype of player is so rare in the NBA right now. So I don't know. There's going to be a lot of questions that need answering, and I don't know how much international play is going to answer those questions, but I think that it will sort of shine a spotlight on them and kind of clarify what. I don't know that we're going to answer any questions, but I think it'll clarify the questions that we're asking, kind of going into the regular season, if that makes sense.
In your opinion, have you learned more, or maybe not reconfigured, but have been impressed with Jaylen or Jayson more this Team USA experience? Because we saw Tatum early on just dominate, and we've heard so much from different beat reporters saying yeah, guys are having trouble in practice shooting the basketball, except for Jayson Tatum, who's knocking down everything. Remember, I think it was Windhorst on Simmons' podcast where he was talking about how certain guys like Joe Harris, who's an incredible three-point shooter, is having a tough time shooting with these
Middleton
balls. Yeah, Middleton, who again, because he's not playing the Celtics, is not shooting well. Whenever he plays Boston, he shoots 65% from three-point range, but he's not playing the C's, so it's not going to work out as well. But Tatum has always been a guy that shot the ball very well and had a couple of early games where he looked like the best player on the floor. But Jaylen has also done a couple of things where he's been a guy that's played a certain role and played really well in that role. Have you been more impressed with Jayson or Jaylen this summer?
I think I don't know that I've been more impressed with either one, just because I think we've seen a lot of the same types of things that we were seeing. You know what I mean? We've seen Jaylen really do a great job of fitting himself into a role. within a team construct. I think that's actually becoming one of his real strengths, is that he can do that. I think we've seen from Tatum, he's going to knock down some shots. He's going to be a little streaky. Every once in a while he's going to bust out a mid-post move that's going to just kind of wow you. And then, who knows if, how many times he's going to do that in a game. Once the games get a little more serious, I think we'll have a better sense of it. I guess if I was put on the spot, I would probably say that I've been a little bit more impressed with Jaylen, just because, he defensively, obviously, he's done a really nice job against multiple people. Offensively, he's still really doing a nice job of picking his spots and, really only attacking when it's a favorable matchup for him. And I think that requires a lot of, self-awareness and self-control, and he's done a nice job of that. So I would say probably, Jaylen at this point, but I don't know that I've seen anything that's made me change my assessment of, Tatum having definitely the higher upside and, potentially being maybe more of a future building piece. I don't know if that's fair to say or not, but I would say that so far Jaylen has probably showed a little bit more in the scrimmages that we've seen.
You think the Jaylen at the 4 thing's going to stick this upcoming season, or is that just something you can do only for international play?
I think it's international play. I don't know. I've never been particularly impressed with Jaylen guarding up to the 4 in the NBA. He's done okay. And I've been really impressed with Jaylen guarding down, being sort of that big shooting guard who just punishes smaller guys. And obviously he can defend, point guards and shooting guards and small forwards. And I feel like he just struggles a little bit when it comes to using his strengths when it comes to the 4. And maybe that's something that he can work on this summer. And, maybe that is something that does translate. It would be a bit of a departure. It would be a step up from where he was last year if he's able to do that. And I don't think that's impossible by any means, but, I would say that the Celtics are probably better served, I guess probably doing it by committee more than anything. But to me, Jaylen's at his best in Boston when he's, sort of abusing smaller defenders instead of, trying to get by bigger defenders, because, another thing that he struggles with at times is his handle. So if he's got to try to beat guys off the dribble, then, and he struggles with that, I don't know that the advantage against a 4 is as pronounced as his size and strength of advantage, against a 2. So I would say they probably, I'm sure they'll try. I'm sure they'll check it out with him at the 4, but I don't know that I would expect it consistently during the season.
Yeah, it's the patented Jaylen Brown backs down a smaller defender within 7 feet of the basket and does a turnaround and fade away. That's been a go-to shot for him. I think the past year-ish.
And it's funny because it's an efficient shot for him. That's not generally an efficient recently, but I would imagine that he's, that it's actually a pretty good percentage shot for him.
Yeah, I would guess that as well. Quick break to tell you, today's show is brought to you by betonline.ag. Basketball, it's in its dead zone right now, starting to get away from that a little bit. We're inching closer and closer, but that doesn't mean you can't make money on the NBA or college right now. Both season titles odds out already. Clippers and Lakers lead the pack of the NBA, plus 350, plus 400 respectively. Celtics, a ginormous long shot to win the title, but win the division, a little bit better odds, just plus 300. Baseball season in full swing. Placing a wager on baseball's never been easier with all the best odds at betonline.ag. This week, I should say, watching Mets and Nats. Mets, get it together. They lost 6 straight games against the Braves, and the Cubs get it together against the Nats and climb back into the wild card race. But wait, can you believe that NFL preseason is already over? NFL season starting next week. To celebrate another season kickoff, betonline.ag and CLNS Media are giving you a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Head over to betonline.ag or use your mobile device to join today and use the promo code CLNS50, that's 50, to receive your welcome bonus. Don't sit in the sidelines this football season. Get into all the action with betonline.ag, your online sportsbook experts. Minimum $55 deposit required. Please see BetOnline's general rules for additional terms and conditions. Back to Tom. Do you feel like, maybe this is just me talking, but do you feel like there's been a lot of Boston Celtics, because they're involved in a lot more. There's 4 guys in Team USA and they have to talk all the time on these media opportunities, but I just feel like there's a lot of players in the team talking about how just trying to change the narrative from last year a little bit. You see, you're hearing from Kemba all the time and Marcus Smart all the time and Jaylen and Jayson and Enes Kanter goes on Fox Sports 1 and First Things First, Nick Wright and CC and everybody. And I just feel like you're hearing a lot from just Celtics players in general to try and like maybe change the narrative and try and get out in front of like, yeah, last year was a disaster, but like we're going to make a really concentrated effort to spin this. Is this like Jeff Twist, like trying to get guys involved with everything? Like I don't know. I just feel like we're hearing a lot from Boston, and maybe that's just because they're on Team USA and reporters are around and they're going to ask these type of questions all the time. It just feels like it's forced to me, Tom. Am I nuts?
No, you're not nuts at all. I think that's an extremely fair assessment. Two, I don't think it's Jeff Twist, but I do think that the Celtics are making a concerted effort to say all the right things, and it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think that there is something to the idea that Kemba is a more natural fit with these guys than Kyrie was. I think there's also something to the idea of like, look, let's wait and let's see them on the court, because you got done with the season and, except for some anonymous sniping, like we've mostly only heard guys say, look, it wasn't Kyrie. This was everybody. This was a collective failure. And, we've heard Jayson Tatum say, like, okay, that, everybody on this team wanted to be good and everybody was trying to be good together, and it just didn't work. And I think that there is cause for concern within that, even with the switch up, from Kyrie to Kemba. I think that it is probably worth wondering, like, okay, if it didn't work last year and they don't have Horford, who was, one of the pieces that actually did work last year, like, how is it going to be different? Even if the attitudes are different, even if people aren't, sniping during the season at each other, is the result on the court going to be different? And if it isn't, are guys going to start to get frustrated again? So, everybody's going to say all the right things right now, and they should. And it's, I guess it's a good thing that they are, because if they weren't saying the right things right now, you'd have real cause for concern. But, I do think it is way too early to be saying like, okay, Kemba sounds like he likes Jayson Tatum. Everybody seems like they're doing well together. Like, I'm sure they're getting along now. It's only going to matter in a few months. It doesn't matter right now. So, I don't think you're crazy at all. I do think that they are trying to like get this narrative out there as much as possible. And I also think that you're right when you just point out like, look, there's only so many storylines from Team USA right now, and the big one is the Celtics. So we're hearing a lot about it because they're getting asked about it every day. So I look forward to media day and having to ask them about it again and just kind of seeing some well-deserved eye rolls. But it'll be I think that we'll probably get a lot more of this type of storyline as the summer goes on.
Yeah, I'm already done with it. I'm like I've heard enough about.
I'm pretty done with it too.
Yeah, how about the Celtics are they're enjoying each other's company and everything. Like I'm done with it. Can we move on, please? Like it's just enough. Enough is enough. I think Boston, and I've been asked this, via interactions on Twitter. So this is just coming from the Twitter sphere a little bit, and I happen to agree with the sentiment. Like I think that there is only a certain amount of minutes to go around, and there's a lot of guys that might deserve minutes. And I'm looking around, like, obviously you have the core guys. You have Smart. You're going to have Kemba, Jayson, Jaylen, Hayward are locks to get a lot of minutes, okay? That's without question. There's the second tier of guys like Vincent. Is it Poirier? Did I get that right? I'm not sure if I'm – is it –
Poirier, yep.
Poirier? Yeah, okay. So he's going to get some minutes. Kanter's going to get some minutes. Rob Williams is probably in line for some minutes. Then you have some newer guys / guys that didn't have an opportunity last year to get more minutes this year. Like, I happen to think that Shemi Ojeleye is going to get a lot of minutes in this team. I think that Morris's minutes might end up going a lot to Shemi because I think he can guard that same way in terms of, like, maybe a guy that's size is a 3 height-wise but built more like a 4 and can guard up a little bit and stretch the floor and shoot threes. I'm all over Carsen Edwards, so we'll get to in a little bit. I love the way he thinks, but Brad Wanamaker's sort of in front of him a little bit and blocking his potential, avenue to getting more minutes. There's Grant Williams, who everybody loves, including myself, and can't wait to see him on a floor with everybody else because he's going to fit right in and be totally seamless. So there's just a lot of minutes. There's a lot of players on the team that deserve minutes, I think, in some capacity, but there's not a lot of minutes to go around. Who do you see getting some of those minutes that are crucial to a team that's trying to make a deep run, the 7th, 8th, 9th guys on the bench?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I think you're right about Shemi. I wonder if we're going to start to see Brad obviously has talked about him being able to guard centers at times. I wonder if we'll see a little bit of him, sort of being like a stretch five at times, like a small ball five. Obviously, he's got the strength to do it. We'll see if he's, if they try that out at all. I think the squeeze is going to come with, some of the rookies. I think that we'll see how it shakes out with Romeo Langford. I mean, I'm high on him. I think he's a really good player. There's just his position is so loaded on this team. It's gonna be tough. I do kind of wonder, and this is just guessing. Pure guessing, not reporting. Or not even guessing, really, just kind of speculating. I wonder if there might be some type of consolidation move at some point. Just because, like you said, there's so many. They ran into this exact same problem last year, like with just too many talented players at too few positions, and not enough minutes to go around, and just kind of the bad vibes that come from that, like the resentment that can build. So I do kind of wonder if there might be something along those lines. I don't know how that would look, or who would be sent where, or what they would be looking to acquire in return. I just think that this team has a lot of not similar problems to last year, but at least, some similar archetypes. Again, they're built kind of similarly. I do think that this year, I think Brad was a little sad that he couldn't get Chemi more minutes last year, and I think that will be a focal point. And I think, I think Rob could become, maybe even like the backup center, or maybe start against certain matchups, because I don't think that Enes Kanter is, I don't know that his defensive problems are going to be sustainable against some of the better teams in the East. So we'll see what happens.
All the guys, you mentioned, again, there's just so many minutes to go around. You can't give them to everybody. And I mentioned it before because I love this kid. I love Carsen Edwards so much. I'm so excited for him. And I feel kind of bad for Brad Wanamaker again, because Brad Wanamaker is actually he has a lot of skill and is very useful and will be a nice backup point guard. And then I think a lot of his minutes will go to Carsen, because Carsen just adds this crazy shooter, like this lights out shooter that can play kind of right away. And he's a guy that defensively might look small, has a 6'6" wingspan, and obviously is physical enough to bang around bodies. And I love the fact it's an old Avery Bradley thing. It's an old Terry Rozier thing when he was younger and would do this. A guy will guard all 92 feet of the floor, and I love that. I love guys that pick up point guards full court and make the opposing point guard's life a living hell. I am so excited for Carsen. Of all the rookies, I like Langford a lot, and I think the gamble was worthwhile there. I'm curious to see what he looks like with a healthy hand. Grant Williams is just awesome, and the way he approaches everything is great. But I am sneakily most excited for Carsen Edwards, because I do think he can help very quickly, right away, in a spot that the Celtics might desperately need. They might need a little more shooting. Your thoughts on Carsen going forward here? I know you might be working on something that's coming out very soon.
Yeah. I'm also high on Carsen. I think he's going to be really good. Like you said, I think that 3-point shooting and that floor spacing, I think having that sort of knockdown, always reliable 3-point shooter is going to be really valuable for the Celtics. Carsen, he's well aware that Summer League was not representative of how his role is going to be in the NBA. He knows that he was given a very, very green light at Summer League that, at least at first, he certainly won't have. But I do kind of think that the Celtics might just use him as, even in a somewhat similar role to Summer League, go out there, go get some buckets, go see what you can do over the next, 10 minutes. You've got 10 minutes to get as many buckets as you can, and then you're coming back to the bench. In his rookie season, I wouldn't be surprised if that is somewhat of his role. And I think you're right that a lot of Carsen's minutes will come at the expense of Brad Wanamaker, who is, like you said, very talented and probably deserves more minutes than he got last year and more than I would expect he'll get this year. But yeah, I think Carsen is really, really talented. I think he's really tough. I think that shines through in a lot of ways, and I think he's going to be a fan favorite. I think Celtics fans are just going to love him, just how hard he plays, and I think that people are going to start drawing comparisons, unfair ones certainly, but I think they'll start drawing comparisons to Isaiah Thomas if he plays well, just because he's undersized and he gets buckets. So I think he'll be a lot of fun. Like you said, I got a story coming out on him soon that I won't step on too much, but he's a really, really interesting, smart guy in ways that make him fun to read about and to write about and to talk to for the beat writers. So I think he's not like he's a very unique personality, and I mean that in a very, very good way. Like he's interesting, he's smart, and he just kind of looks at things a little bit differently than a lot of people, and I think that's really refreshing. So he'll be somebody that's fun to follow, fun to watch, and definitely fun to write about this year.
So look for that. Matt's Live, that'll drop very shortly. Tom Westerholm of Matt's Live, appreciate the time, buddy. You guys do a great job. You don't have much more vacation left, but enjoy the rest that you have, okay?
Thanks a lot, man. I certainly plan to.
And that will do it for this episode of Celtics Beat here on CLNS Media, again, the leading online provider of audio-video coverage of your Boston Celtics. A couple of thank yous to hand out, first and foremost, to you guys out there for listening to the show here this week. Appreciate you guys. Adam should be back next week, back from vacation. And we're getting closer and closer and closer. Thankfully, I can't, again, we talked about this at the beginning of the podcast. I can't do this whole non-NBA. I need something's got to give me my fix. I'm dying here. Thanks to you guys. Thanks to Tom Westerholm for joining us here today. Again, remember to follow him in his coverage on Mass Live. A couple more shout-outs. Our sponsor, betonline.ag, of course. Use that promo code CLNS50 for a 50% bonus at sign-up of a deposit of $55 or more. Shout-outs to, Adam Kaufman, obviously, Nick Gelso, John, Larry, everybody else at CLNS Media. I'll see you guys at some point. Not sure when. You'll see Adam next week, but enjoy the rest of your week, the first week of September. Football season's coming. Gino, get me out of here, kid.